Thanks for downloading the Swearing In Podcast, where you'll hear the origin stories of those who chose to serve. So ground your gear, take a seat, and listen up. The Swearing In Podcast starts right now. Hello and welcome to the Swearing In Podcast. I am your host, Marty Smith. Today, I get the pleasure of speaking with former Army Staff Sergeant and Bronze Star recipient, Chad Rancourt. Chad grew up in Winslow, Maine, and he joined the Army as an 11 Bravo infantryman in 2004. He was assigned to the 101st Airborne Division at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and later deployed to Ramadi, Iraq. So that's a little background on Chad. Now, let's get to work. So today I'm sitting with Chad Rancourt. Is that how you say the last name?
That is correct. The wonderful French-Canadian name of Rancourt.
It's not Rancourt or anything like that?
Yeah, Rancourt.
Even better.
Yeah.
Chad was a former staff sergeant in the United States Army, 11 Bravo. And he became a sniper, which is a Bravo 4 designator. He was were you with the 101st the whole time?
I actually was in the same platoon my whole 6 and some change years. Yeah.
I've heard of snowbirding, but I never heard of snowbirding in the same platoon. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, it was a really unique experience that I was able to stay there and move up within the ranks of, that platoon. We were very highly deployable. I spent very little time stateside the whole time I was in. So I was fortunate, I got to meet a lot of good people. So
yeah. Well, let's back up. So where'd you grow up?
Yeah. So I grew up in a small town of Winslow, Maine, a dying mill town. We had what was called Kimberly-Clark mill there, and then or actually it was Scott paper first, which we've all seen on the shelves of our toilet paper during these wonderful shortages. Oh. And then, and then Kimberly-Clark bought them out. And then shortly after they closed down the town, so we were a pretty prosperous town. The thing was everyone got out of high school, went and worked for their mill, got married. Their wives didn't have to work. They had enough to sustain their homes and live their lives. And that was gone. So basically saw a town that was, dying in front of my eyes.
So did you ever work at the mill growing up? Or was it closed by that
so
time?
It was closed by the time I would have been an age.
Okay.
So I think it was probably my freshman year of high school that I think it closed down. And the town saw a dramatic decline. It was immediate. It was the employment for everyone. And then, you saw the department stores close, and a lot of the small businesses closed. Main Street basically shut down. Apparently there's been a resurgence there recently, which is great. But yeah, there was nothing there.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was a weird place. It's kind of sad to see that go away. I didn't understand how powerful that was. That being that young, not caring about it, but now looking back on it, seeing this dichotomy of change in the industry, is quite interesting. So, growing up, I also had a camp in the mountains of Maine, some relatives that were there. So I'd spend most of my summers hunting and fishing. And,
you did?
Middle of nowhere. Yeah. I would literally just go backpack hiking. I would just throw in a backpack and just, start hiking the backcountry.
That's
just,
nice.
Come back a couple days later. I really, really enjoyed it. It was a good childhood. But then
little did you know,
Yeah.
You're laying the groundwork for future endeavors there. Huh?
Yeah, it certainly helped later on. So I would say probably my sophomore year, I became a little bit less interested in scholastic enterprises. I always did fine in school, but my head wasn't in it. And then I saw myself going nowhere. There was nothing there. There was, nothing there. I wasn't interested in going to college at the time.
Yeah.
It wasn't a thing. So, just going out and I don't want to say hanging out with the wrong crowd, but maybe some people rougher around the edges, getting into, fights and, all those good things, the great makings of an 11 Bravo. And then
Right.
one day I just woke up and realized that, what am I doing? What's going on? At that point, the, Iraq, or I guess Afghanistan, had been going on for a little while. The Iraq War had just started kind of kicking off, the more kinetic operations initially.
The Iraq. So we're talking 2003.
Yeah, 2003. Yeah.
Okay.
2004 was my graduation year. I ended up having enough credits to kind of finish early, even though I wasn't going very often. Went and talked to a recruiter.
Probably good on both sides, I guess, right?
Yeah. They probably didn't want me there much. I was kind of the person where they would say, you need to go to detention. And I would say, what are you going to do? No,
yeah,
I'm not.
Right.
Like they had no play.
Sure.
So then I went and talked to a recruiter. And at that point I was a young 17, I believe, if I remember correct. It's crazy how fast the time goes by, but let's say 17. And they actually had a program where I went to the Northwoods of Maine and Limestone Air Force Base, which was basically shut down at that point. But they did have a couple programs up there, and they had like a little wilderness survival, outdoor recreation kind of thing. So I went up there for a couple months, killing my time in the delayed entry program until they allowed me to ship to basic. So I guess I was probably just before 18 or 18 at that point.
Now, why'd you go delayed entry? Was that the Army's choice or was that your choice?
It was basically, I didn't have a choice because of my age at that point.
Oh, okay.
They couldn't accept me, even though I had, parental permission at that point.
Really? Okay.
So I think it's probably their ploy to make sure that they don't lose interest in people.
Huh.
So like, somebody young comes in saying, hey, this is what I want to do. And then, 6 months later, they decide it's not for them. Excuse me.
Right.
Yeah. So I went up there and that was pretty interesting. It was a pretty fun thing. Got to get certified in wilderness firefighting. I don't even know why they did all these things. Whitewater rafting in the Allagash. It was a good time. But then when I was ready, shipped out of MEPS in Boston. There was no MEPS in Maine. And flew into Atlanta, Georgia, and then the drill sergeants met you at I remember they just said, go to the waterfall. And I remember in the Atlanta airport, there's some sort of like clock tower waterfall thing. Again, it was so many years ago, but we all just kind of gathered there. And you could tell it was, all these kids with one backpack with them.
Right.
Kind of gathering around this thing. The drill sergeants walked in. Of course, they weren't doing the drill sergeant thing at that point.
No.
But, they just rounded you up onto their buses and then to Fort Benning it was.
And so you swore in there at Boston? Or did you swear
Boston,
in at Wow.
Yeah, Boston MEPS, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so the recruiter drove me from Maine all the way to Boston, which I guess is pretty standard there.
Well, they got to make their mission. They got to hit that monthly total.
Did their stupid physical, bend over and have some creepy old man, stuff his fingers in places that you don't necessarily want. And at that moment, you kind of start that bug in your head is, what am I doing?
That's right.
And then, hopped on a plane. And I remember I was sick. I had a terrible cold, and it's kind of an irrelevant thing, but I remember getting on the plane and I remember my ears couldn't depressurize because I was sick, and I just remember it hurt terribly when I got down, and I was like, that stayed with me about 2 weeks when I was in reception, basic training. So I just had an old man violate me, and then I was sitting in reception not knowing what's going on with a terrible cold and a climate that I was certainly not used to. And this is
welcome to the Army,
September time frame. Yeah, exactly.
So that was 2004. You make it down there, right? Well, they bus you out to. So you did basic at Benning?
Yes, correct. Well, one station unit training, so basic and AIT for infantry was all straight through. I think it was 16, 17 weeks.
Okay. Wow. All in the same. Did you get to move barracks? Did they move you barracks at all?
No, it's all the same place.
Really?
So I don't remember the battalion. So you get to replacement at Benning. They split up the infantry people from the rest. I think they also have some. I think they do standard, or they used to do standard basic training there as well.
Yeah.
For non. I think most of it was probably combat arms from there. I don't remember seeing any. No, I was just gonna say, so about 2 weeks in replacement where they just kind of march you around a little bit. You don't really know what's going on. Those are all the drill sergeants that are coming off the trail. They have no interest in being drill sergeants anymore. Right. You know, as I later, learned through my career. So they're all nice. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They teach you the Army song, the Army creed, all that crap. But then you wait for your turn to go to your training unit. Yeah, so there I was, a semi-fat kid, not knowing what was going on, waiting, having no real idea, thinking at that point, like, hey, maybe this isn't so bad. But little did I know.
Did you try, before you came, did you try to run or push up, sit ups or anything like that before you came?
Yeah, so I did a little bit, and I had a basic level of fitness,
okay.
Hiking, hunting, running around, but not the level that was expected for an infantryman. Which I learned very, very quickly.
Okay, so you get out of AIT. Did you go to jump school right after that?
So there was a little bit of break. So I went to the 16 Wags basic, one station unit training, and then I was assigned to the 101st Airborne. They were kind of spinning up a little bit there. They had a couple deployments under their belts. So I think I had a 2-week break there. And then before that, I did have an airborne contract. So at that point, I went to Bragg, airborne school, never made another jump again. And then from there, I went to Campbell with wings, probably thinking I was, more qualified to do anything than I was, got to replacement. And I didn't know where I was going from there, and got to Fort Campbell. I don't know if you'd ever spent any time on Campbell, but I did
a week out there, TDY one time, training some other artillery guys, but that was a long time ago. So
yeah, it was, terrible barracks to get there. And, again, like not knowing what to expect. And at that point, I didn't even have real orders. It was just 101st Airborne, infantry.
Right.
And they weren't airborne at that point.
They weren't.
Air assault.
No, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I did. So I get there, and then I don't recall a lot of the time frames, but I feel like I was there a really long time. And then finally got the final orders to the 4th Brigade combat team, which they were just standing up. We didn't even have a real name yet.
Oh, so really?
There was 3 other brigades at that point. So 187 Rakasans, which have quite the lineage.
I've heard them. I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're kind of the dicks of the 101st. The 50 Deuce and 327th, which is one of the original paraglider regiments.
Yeah, that sounds very familiar. Yeah, it sure does.
Of course, not paraglider now, but so sent to 4th Brigade, and it wasn't long after then. Like, they didn't really have a command structure set up at that point. It was like all like the barracks, all the units were all just basically brand new and built.
Wow.
So then at that point, they closed down the 506 in Korea. So there was one battalion of 506 infantry in Korea. They closed them down and they reassigned us to the 506 infantry, which the 506 has been made infamous by the Band of Brothers series, right? On HBO. That's right. Yeah. So that was 2nd Battalion, but I was assigned to 1st Battalion. So 1st Battalion, 506 infantry. I was assigned to Bravo Company, which was later given the moniker Baker Company, because they were trying to also follow the history of the World War II guys.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was motivating to be assigned to a unit with such heritage and history. And I was actually one of the first ones there, so I was an E2 at the time. There was no leadership structure there at all. There was no, training set up at that point, but it filled in pretty quick.
What are you talking? Is that, so what's that? 2005, 2006 time frame?
Yeah, that would have been 2005, beginning of 2005.
Yeah, so really?
I think I graduated basic in October of 2004, somewhere on that front.
Yeah.
Time frame. Yeah. So this is early 2005.
Oh, jeez. So you got all the good Atlanta weather there when you were going through basic, huh?
Yes. Yeah. We had one hurricane come through that didn't slow the training down at all.
But no, I didn't of course not.
I didn't find basic training really all that difficult.
No, it's more just getting used to the Army way.
It's a game.
It is.
Life is a game. You figure out what game you're playing at that moment, and you play it to the best you can.
And that's true. The earlier you can figure that out, I think the better off you are. Since I started talking about you being a sniper, I know anybody who's going to want to listen is like, let's get on to that, right? So let's get on to that. How did that come about for you?
So that was actually after my first deployment.
Well, let's back up. So you deployed out 2005, 2006?
2005. So the unit got stood up pretty quick from there. Before, when you were waiting to get stood up, they sent me to Air Assault School there on Fort Campbell, which is kind of a joke. But I mean, it was a good learning experience.
Yeah.
Then the unit got together, had a little bit of, training time, shoot houses, kicking indoors, basic battle drills. And then we got assignments to go to Iraq. We were initially assigned, this was late 2005, October-ish. So, I mean, I was there for less than a year before we were deployed. E3, I got promoted once. Until that point, I got assigned to our weapons squad. So I don't know how familiar you are with infantry platoon setup. So typically you have 3 squads and then a weapons squad. So 3 rifle team squads and then a weapons squad, which is the 240 Javelin ammo bearer, and then the senior squad leader. So the senior squad leader for the weapons squad would be next to be the platoon sergeant if the platoon sergeant was out. So it was actually kind of a privilege to be in that group, except you carry a lot of heavy shit.
Especially being leg guys, man. You're carrying everything.
Yeah, it wasn't great. I mean, my typical kit for my deployment to Iraq, not even with any extra ammo for the 240. I mean, you're looking at probably 75 pounds.
Yeah.
My back still feels it to this day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's not great. But it's a lot of weight. You wear all that ammo on the front.
Sure.
And it takes its toll on your body after a while. Yeah. I mean, all the training leading up. So at that point, most of the senior squad leaders had at least had one tour at that point. Not very many Afghanistan tours, but there was a couple guys that had gone to the initial invasion of Iraq.
Oh, wow.
Which was pretty easy for them.
Really?
Gathering. Later on, the initial invasion of Iraq, a lot of the Iraqis just laid down their arms. They didn't put up much fight. I mean,
Sure.
Bush's plan was the shock and awe worked.
Oh, you're talking guys back on Desert Storm.
No. The initial invasion of Iraq. So they pushed through.
Oh, okay. So the same thing.
So
because Desert Storm, they did the same thing. We bombed the hell out of them for for 3 months.
It was the same plan for the initial invasion of Iraq. We bombed the shit out of them. We moved in hard and heavy, and there wasn't much of a fight. Their actual military themselves, laid down their arms and trickled back into the population. The real hell started when the insurgency kicked off, which is when I was there.
Lucky you.
Yeah, so we got there. We landed in Kuwait. I don't remember what fire base in Kuwait, just another shithole in the middle of the desert. Stand and waited there for our final orders. And then we found out we were going to Ramadi, which we didn't.
Oh, God.
No one knew what that was, at that time. And like I said, we had a bunch of senior squad leaders at that point that had been once, and they didn't think it was going to be anything, difficult. They thought it was going to be just the same old. So we flew into Kuala Diem Air Base in Iraq initially, and then they brought us in CH-47s to what's called Corregidor, a fairly large OP. I mean, it wasn't.
Yeah. I
don't know what large. I mean, they had some tanks there. And then from there, we probably got our first indication when they flew into Kuala Diem on C-130s that they would only fly at night, and then the low approach was quite hair raising, where they dropped from elevation to landing
Is that
quite the maneuver.
That infamous like corkscrew thing that they do, kind of coming down?
Yeah.
Oh my God! Yeah, I heard about
should have known that. So at that point, we're all kind of thinking like, hey, maybe this isn't a joke. Like, why are we doing this? And then at that point, they, set up the CH-47s, the shit hooks to bring us into Corregidor. And again, they would only fly us at night. So we landed there, and again, it was complete darkness. We all had our nods on, kind of looking out the birds, like, seeing what we could see. And I could see the dim lights. It wasn't anything too spectacular. We landed in the middle of the night of Corregidor, and then we were assigned to a small outpost that was probably about 2 miles away from Corregidor, still in Ramadi proper. So the next day they trucked us there, and it was just this. It was called the Sheik's Palace. It was some sheik's house that had been blown out. One of the walls was completely blown out of it. The unit that was there, and I don't even remember what unit was there at this point. Yeah, it's been so long. I'm surprised I forget some of these details. But much in regards to improvement, and it was called Opie Trotter. They had named it Opie Trotter for one of their guys that they had lost before we got there. So we got there, and it was just, there was no real improvements there. I mean, I can't even imagine why they didn't improve their surroundings a little bit more.
Really?
It was, I think they just looked beat down. All of them just looked absolutely destroyed and beat down. And it was pretty striking to see them. I mean, this was the Wild West. There was, no laundry facilities. There was, we didn't have power. They had a shitty giant generator that kind of worked half the time or not. We were burning all our own shit. We had these piss tubes that were dug into the ground. There's just flies everywhere. It was a rainy season at that point, so the whole motor pool, as you want to call it, we had shitty Humvees that weren't even really up armored, that we inherited. We didn't come with much. I mean, it was just one battalion that went there to take over. And Ramadi had been completely just ignored, even though it was brewing an insurgency there. So a little bit of history before that. So the Marines pushed through Fallujah, and in their infinite wisdom, they pushed through in one direction and didn't court on the other side. And the majority of them, it was a crazy fight for them, don't get me wrong. But from Fallujah, they all pushed to Ramadi. And then it was also a hotbed for Iranians and lots of other foreign fighters, which we saw a lot of. Very few of the people that ended up being taken in combat or killed in combat, that enemy combatants were not Iraq citizens. They were all foreign. I guess I'm kind of losing track of here, but so we got there. There was no improvements. I mean, it was just a shithole, just mud everywhere. It just smelled terrible. Shit burning. There was like a burn pit in the back of the facility where they just burned everything.
What was the mission when you went out there? I mean, to use that as a base of operations, or
so Corregidor was
constantly.
Corregidor was the main base of operations, which is where we initially landed, and then Opie Trotter, where we went. So there was a supply route that went from Tukwala Diem through Fallujah into Ramadi, and then I don't know where it went past there.
Yeah.
And our main goal was to secure that route. And also run kinetic operations for high value targets as well. Which was later. That was the most heavily IED'd. I don't know if that's a proper term, road and all of that.
I think we all understand it. If it's a proper term or not, I understand it.
Yeah, supply routes could not get through.
Wow.
They just couldn't get through. They were getting ambushed all the time. They were getting blown up. People were dying left and right trying to get there. So that was our goal, is to get through there, and secure it. So we had been there maybe 3 days when we got assigned our first mission, and at that point we were still working alongside of the unit that was there. And in Ramadi, there was a place called the Malab, which was kind of, again, like the Wild West of the Wild West. So we went on a mission out there. They were kind of just trying to show us their battle space and what was going on. And they had a mission there where they knew there was a cache of weapons from an insurgent force. And again, like, I'm very, very fresh. You know, I'm an E3, obviously never seen combat. Most of our squad leaders had seen combat, but not in the level of this. They had complete superiority when they first went. So Ramadi ran along, I don't remember if it was the Tigris or Euphrates. It split somewhere in there in an area called the Fish Hook. But again, it was rainy season. So they brought us there. It was a dismounted patrol, and our job was to bring sappers, escort sappers in so they could go into this building for this cache of weapons that was already secured by the Iraqi police. And they were going to go ahead and set charges and, you know, get rid of it.
Okay.
And there was a railroad trestle that ran off to one side, the Euphrates or Tigris. I'm sorry, I don't remember which was on the right side, and then Papyrus. I guess that's what it's called. Tall reeds were along the side. So we're sludging through the mud the whole time, and this railroad trestle on one side was very, very tall. I would say it was probably 35, feet tall. That no trains had run there for, I'm sure, a long time.
Did you get the feeling at the time that, hey, we don't have a lot of room to maneuver in this area here?
I had no idea what was coming. No idea. It just felt like training.
Okay.
I was as my M4, some 7.62 on my back for my gunner.
Yeah.
And we were just going to go set up our position, set up our gun sight, pull over, watch, and that was going to be it.
Okay.
Yeah, that got a pretty rude awakening pretty quickly. So we were walking alongside of it. We ended up crossing a dirt road that led into the Malab district. And as soon as I crossed it, I was probably 4 steps over. The world just erupted around me.
Oh, my God.
I just remember a flash, getting knocked down, and then the world just opened up, just rounds everywhere. I mean,
really?
I didn't understand what was happening at first. I was pretty rattled from the explosion initially. So the story behind that is, as I was later told by the sappers, is that there was an IED that they had planted in the dirt road, but it had rained recently, so it had actually settled, and the IED was designed to take out a vehicle. So it was buried too deep. So because it was buried too deep, the blast was directed almost directly up instead of out. So that's the only reason why me and a few other guys survived. It was because that blast was directed upwards because it was buried too deep.
Yeah.
And the rounds started kicking off, and I guess in some movies, you hear references to, like it sounds like firecrackers or something like that. It literally sounded like black cat firecrackers, and it's not the sound of the rifles; it's the report of the round snapping over your head as it's breaking the sound barrier. As I later learned, it just. Just a snapping sound, like snapping your fingers all around me. And I had no idea where it was coming from. It was just complete chaos. I was a little bit rattled at that point. No one was hurt.
Sure.
And at that point, so there was still the large reeds to our right, and then the railroad trestle to our left. And I was just looking over and watching these reeds just start falling over, like snapping, like somebody was like cutting them, in the midway. There's just the rounds ripping through. And, we just all started just engaging through the reeds. We had no idea what we were shooting at all. I looked at one point behind me, and one of my friends took a round right to the body armor, and it ricocheted. It must have been at a good angle because it didn't hit him directly on the body armor, and it went through all of his magazine pouches. And I remember looking over and seeing the spring from one of his magazines pop out, and rounds just go everywhere.
Wow!
And at that point, I was like, "Holy shit! Like, what is happening? Right now?"
Yeah.
And there was nothing for us to do. We couldn't ford, this river to go to the other side, to go engage the enemy. I mean, it wasn't a huge force at that point. It was, my platoon, a platoon of sappers, and then some other scragglers here and there. There was no way we were going to assault into this random town with the amount of people that we had, especially with the volume of fire that we were taking. So we decided to leave at that point because there was nothing we could do. We weren't getting to the cache of weapons. It wasn't worth it for us to keep I'm assuming, again, I was an E3 at the time. I wasn't part of the decision-making processes. So we decided to leave. So there we are, just getting lit up through these reeds, shooting back. Who knows what we were hitting.
Yeah. Could you tell where they were?
Well, so at that point, the whole area of operations is actually a Marine run area of operations, and they actually brought some Cobras in shortly after, and they were launching rockets into some buildings on the other side.
Okay.
So I'm assuming that they were staged in the buildings at that point, but I don't remember seeing any flashes from in there or anything like that.
Oh, my goodness.
Because we were pretty low in regards to where the reeds were, so honestly, no idea.
So you had a little deflate. You had a little deflate there, which sounds, thank God, right? Yeah.
But it was tough being one side of railroad trestle being pinned against it. You couldn't really get to the other side. I mean, you probably could have, but there was a lot of rounds kicking off it through those, as they were cutting through the reeds.
Wow.
And then when the Cobras came in and started launching their rockets at the buildings, the enemy engagement stopped.
Okay.
At that point. So that was decent. One guy took a round in the shoulder and he was fine. Another guy, when we got back, one of the sapper units, I think it was a National Guard sapper unit. So
really,
he looked really rattled, took off his helmet, and the Kevlar helmets are pretty unique in design. Whereas if you take a round straight on, you're done. It doesn't matter. Like they're 7.62 by 39 or
no kidding
54R, whatever it was, is gonna pierce right through. There's nothing you can do it. But at an angle, it directs the rounds through the Kevlar itself. So he pulled it off, and there was a bulge all the way through the top of the helmet.
Oh,
and there was literally a round poking out the other side. So that round had hit his helmet, traveled all the way up to the top of the helmet,
goodness.
the other side. The look on his face was, I'll never forget that. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
To see that.
That's amazing. That is absolutely unbelievable.
Took us forever to get back. There I am with a load of 7.62 ammo for our 240. My rounds that I was carrying, just sludging and knee-high muck, just trying to get back.
God.
So we get back, debriefed a little bit again. Like I don't have a lot of information about the rest of it, as I was just an E3 at that point. I was just told to go sit down and drink water. And then, we load back on our trucks and just go back to our OP trotter. And that was the start of probably the longest 15 months of my life.
15 months they sent you over there.
Yeah, we had 15
Holy
months.
Cow.
At one point, we were almost deemed combat ineffective because we had lost so many men. Not a lot of KIAs, mostly wounded from IEDs. If you get a chance, we had a reporter embedded with us for a little while, Michael Fomento. He wrote an article called "The New Band of Brothers."
I think I have read that in the past.
Yeah,
that sounds very, very familiar to me.
It was pretty profound. At one point, HBO was thinking about doing a small series, as kind of not like a series, but doing a special as a follow-up to like the Band of Brothers in regards to the new unit that was stood up, and then they were going to call it the New Band of Brothers. And that wasn't why he was there, but I think he was trying to be a part of it.
Well, it's a catchy title. If he, it was very good. So,
and it was interesting. Some highlights from some of that. I have a lot of interesting memories. So the new Band of Brothers, the article that he wrote, I think it was in the Atlantic, if I remember correctly. But he talks about one mission that we were on. So Chief Michael Mansour, one of the only ones to get a Medal of Honor in the Iraq War. He was SEAL Team 5. We were on a mission all together. It was the same SEAL team as Chris Kyle. the famous Chris Kyle.
The famous Chris Kyle.
Was ridiculous, by the way.
He
American Sniper.
I have. I mean, I read his book. Right when it came out.
And the Devil of Ramadi, he called himself. That was interesting. They weren't there for very long. They did run quite a few missions, but I'll always remember watching that movie recently and just laughing at the scene when it was just showing some Marines, because there's a lot of Marines there and us, and them saying like, "Oh, we feel safe because Chris Kyle's on Overwatch." Not the case. No one knew. I mean, I'm sure he was a great shooter, but no one felt any safer in Ramadi with him on Overwatch.
Correct. Right.
It was a very dramatizing. I'm sure he was a wonderful human being. But on the mission where Chief Michael Mansour was killed, and he got the Medal of Honor for it. Basically, it all kicked off as they were on a patrol. then the Pennsylvania National Guard was there. They're heavy. They called them heavy QRF at the time. So they had an Abrams unit there. So they were running into the Malab of their Abrams. They got hit by an IED, or they ran over an IED, and it was a lucky strike. It cut their fuel line, set the tank on fire. And all of the unit's infinite wisdom, they wanted us to go try to secure the tank and recover it, because Abrams have sensitive information on them. Even the armor is considered classified, reactive armor. Not that the Iraqis were going to be able to do anything with it. I don't know, maybe sell it off.
Even for me, just hearing that sounds like shades of Black Hawk Down all over again, right?
Yeah, it was a very bad fight. We were out there for days. A lot of people lost in that fight. That's the mission that Mansour was killed in.
Okay.
That was brutal, trying to secure that.
Were those
tank.
SEALs trying to get that sensitive information, or were they trying to make it to that tank?
I don't know why they were there. There was no reason for having special operations in that area. There were high value targets, but that was a kinetic fight. That was go on patrol, movement to contact, find the contact, destroy the enemy. That was the goal.
That's not even in their job jar. Yeah, really.
That's exactly. So I don't know why they were there, but they were cowboys. So they would go out all the time, kicking in doors, and then they would get into a fight, and we'd have to go in. And I'm not saying that we were. I'm certainly not saying that we were better than them. They were amazing shooters and soldiers.
No, they're very good tactically.
But Ramadi was not a place to go in with a team of 7 people. It wasn't that place.
Yeah.
They would try it, and then they would get pinned down because the world would come down on them. And our units would have to go in, and they called heavy QRF one day for the Abrams to come in, and that Abrams got destroyed.
And that's why they were called in to.
That's why the Abrams
to give them assistance.
To give them assistance, which is a pretty standard call. I mean, for any unit, not just the SEALs, but that time they were ready. The world came down on us. I've never seen anything like it. I mean, I was literally watching people run through the alleys, dropping IEDs in the road, or I remember at one point setting up a position. I watched a large artillery piece. I don't know what it was, like a round itself. I'm assuming it was 155 or something. It seemed big, just getting dragged across the ground, and I was just watching it just get pulled across an alley, and they must have tied a string to it and were pulling it across the alley to set it in there. So they were trying to trap us in. All our escape routes, they were trying to put IEDs out there. They weren't trying to hide them at that point. They were just trying to drag them in the road. So there was no way to get through. They were taking direct engagements.
Trying to funnel you somewhere, right?
Yeah, they're trying to keep us there.
Yeah.
So it ended up being, anyway, if you get a chance, read, the new Brand of Brothers. He kind of outlines it a little bit. It was a bad fight in Ramadi. The Battle of Ramadi is a known thing. Lost a lot of people. I mean, luckily, unlike in Vietnam, the majority of our casualties, which they still have to live with this their whole lives. So I don't want to detract from that. Were not KIA.
Right.
They were WIA severely. So in my time in Ramadi, we took more casualties at that time than any other, unit in Iraq at any given time. We were just eaten up. IEDs, we didn't have the support that we needed. Company level operations trying to do too much.
Yeah.
It was tough, at those times, to watch those things happen.
Well, still, and this is all your first rotation, right?
Yeah, first rotation.
Your first tour ever.
Within 3 days, I was ambushed and blown up.
So you're 19 witnessing all this, right?
Yeah. Actually, I ended up turning 21 in Iraq right before we came home. But I got blown up. I don't know how many times. IEDs. It was pretty interesting. At some point, they started giving us more up armored Humvees.
Yeah, that was nice.
L114s, I think they were called. Irrelevant, doesn't really matter. But the Iraqis were the insurgents. I don't want to say Iraqis. The insurgents were really good at laying these IEDs. They would go out there and they would put chemicals on the road, or they would burn the road to pull up the tar. They'd lay bombs underneath the tar, and they'd repave it. You would never know.
God. Unbelievable.
They didn't have any extremely crazy orders. They took out enough of our people doing it, but nothing too bad. but yeah, I mean, I got hit a lot. I mean, so we'd go down this goddamn MSR and this main supply route.
Yeah.
And typically we'd only drive at night with our PVS 14s, and we had blackout lights in our Humvees, which is caps, over our headlights. So, I mean, we would just go as fast as possible. And we're doing, 45 miles an hour down this road in complete night vision. Just puckered, just completely puckered, like hoping that it wasn't your time.
Wow.
And then also when we were there, it was the first documented use of chlorine bombs. So they were taking chlorine and, somehow attaching it to whatever UXO they had and blowing it up. And like they ended up killing a couple people with chlorine bombs, burning their lungs out. So at one point we had to start carrying our pro masks,
Yeah.
Like,
God.
IDs. Like if you survive the ID, all of a sudden you're going to be sucking in chlorine gas and your lungs burning out.
Yeah. I had no idea they were doing
that.
Wow.
It was a rough place. We got relieved there, and then that was all during the Battle of Ramadi, as it's been deemed later on. And then they started dedicating more forces there, given they saw our casualties. And then I think it turned around. Recently, I think a couple of years ago, I saw an article that they were having a marathon. The Iraqi people were having a marathon there. It was like a crazy thing, to read about, like from my experiences in seeing the town. That
of course,
they were somewhat back on their feet. They're obviously not governing like we would hope they would, but
no,
it was pretty interesting
to
see.
So you didn't receive any replacements during your tour?
5 or 6.
Oh, it was just.
It was just trickling in. Yeah.
Okay.
We just had to make do with what we had. At one point they almost pulled us all completely out because they deemed us combat ineffective just because we didn't have enough people.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Again, like not a ton of KIAs, even though like way more than everyone else, but just injuries mostly from IEDs.
Yeah.
The IEDs weren't quite as sophisticated as they got later, but chlorine bombs weren't great. I never experienced any chlorine bombs, but it was in our area.
Wow.
Lots of sniper attacks took out a lot of people. Ramadi was a rough fight. And I don't know that it'll ever go down in history as bad as it was. Except for,
I don't know. It's got its place in history. You say that name and people know, you say Ramadi and people know. So
yeah, it was an interesting fight. So
that's a hell of a way to put it, but
yeah. We came back home to Fort Campbell. I was just an E4 at that point.
Wow.
Turned 21 in Iraq. Didn't get to enjoy the fruits of that, but
no, I can't imagine.
Not that it ever stopped me before. Yeah.
Did they fly you straight back? You didn't get to go through Italy or anything like that?
Ireland. Yeah, we stopped in Ireland on the way. Yeah.
Oh.
I remember on the way back, I don't remember the airport, but I remember it was Ireland, and they just given us a bunch of Ambien to get back.
Yeah.
And I just remember our plane broke down in Ireland.
Of course.
And, like all of us are like out of our minds, like on Ambien, like
Oh God, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just like like all of us laying over the airport, it was somewhat closed off, to the normal population there. But I remember in a haze, that being quite an interesting thing. And then we landed back at Fort Campbell. Actually, we landed in Bangor, Maine first.
Okay.
Again, everyone just basically out of it on Ambien because they just kept pumping it into us. Which it was kind of I didn't know we were going to fly into Bangor. I probably would have called some friends.
No kidding. No kidding.
But then from Bangor to Fort Campbell, got off, and then back to your life, I guess.
So that's got to be your first hitch, right? Your first enlistment's got to be pretty close, right, to being done there. Or did you enlist for 6?
No, I enlisted for 4, and that was the first 2.5.
Oh, okay. God damn.
Yeah, it was a pretty wild ride. At that point, when I enlisted, basic training wasn't part of your enlistment. So that was tagged on. So you signed on for 4 years plus basic training.
Yeah.
So your
clock doesn't start until, yeah. Wow.
But I didn't hate my life at that point. I was okay with, it was rough, but like I was okay.
How was
I was in the mindset.
How was the unit kind of morale? How was your left and right buddies? You just kind of, did you help each other through it? Did you, were you all kind of just like, wow, can't believe what we just went through?
Interestingly, we were all pretty good. Honestly, we had our first sergeant First Sergeant Charles Gilmer. I don't know where that man is now. He's probably retired at this point. He was the scariest man I've ever met in my life. We used to call him the 400-pound gorilla.
Really?
If anyone was out of line, that guy would literally choke slam them and like throw them to the wall, slap them, and tell them to pull their shit together because he understood what was going on. He was the only one that he actually, before he even got there, had a star above his CIB. So he had been to war before.
Whoa. Yeah.
No one really knew his history. And I know that sounds like some bullshit story, but this guy
how does it get out unless somebody tells you? Yeah.
He was tabbed. I mean, he was a scary, scary man.
Really?
Chuck Gilmer. I'm sure he went on to do crazy great things, and he definitely did some crazy great things before us.
Yeah.
But it was him. He got us through that deployment. I remember at one point we got ambushed on the roof of our building. That son of a bitch came out with an M107 Barrett, and was firing it from the shoulder at the enemy. Just like, I mean, when I'm saying 400-pound gorilla, like, I'm not joking. This man was a 400-pound gorilla. And yeah, he just ran up there with that M107,
wow,
28 pounds or something like that, and he was just firing it from the shoulder. I don't know what he was shooting at, but it didn't matter. Like, he was up there without any body armor, without any Kevlar on, standing over the edge of the building on that thing on the shoulder, just firing back. And that was the man that he was. And if anyone started, bitching out, because there was people that, started cowarding a little bit, when we were talking about going out on missions and getting in a truck and driving down MSR Michigan. I mean, he would literally choke slam him. I mean, it didn't matter what your rank was. If you were lieutenant, staff sergeant, he did not give a shit. He knew what we were going through, and he knew what it took to get us through all of that.
Unbelievable.
He was kind of a rock to get us through all of it. Man, if for whatever random reason he ends up listening to this at some point in the future, he is.
Well, you're covered.
That guy will always be a hero in my eyes.
That's fantastic.
I hope he's still
That's
around.
great. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was part 1 of my interview with Chad Rancourt. Next up, in part 2, Chad talks about going through Army Sniper School and his deployment to Afghanistan. Don't miss the conclusion of this interview. So until next time, on your feet and fall out.